Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Assalamu alaikum, hörmətli mehmanlar. Məmnunlarınki qatnışıb bəginizə rəhmət. Bulubmu O'rta Asiyadan bəzən qərindaşlarımız qatnışıbdı. Nəhayət xoş olduq. Bütün dünyadakı Uyğurların şundaq gerçi hər qandaq həmin yerdə bolsaqmı, başqa yerlərdə bolsaqmı, amma bizning qalbimiz bir tutaş vətən üçün soqqan yürəklər, nə soquşun qəti nəzər. Yenalam biz bir məqsəd, bir nişan üçün köləş qılımız. Bu endi birinchi qitimliq bizningki to'rdan elib berilgan Uyg'urlarga advocacy qilish yoki bo'lmasa lobbichilik deymiz endi qilish yig'inininki birinchi qismi. Bu yerda endi bu introduction deymiz. Tunishtirishga loyiq bir narsa endi bu advocacyga nima qanday xizmat qilaymiz, o'zimizningki demokratik haq-huquqdan foydalanib vatandagi Uyg'urlarga qanday xizmat qilaymiz degan niyatda shakllangan bir yig'in endi bu. Bu yig'indan hamda biz bundan keyin insonlarni bizning yoshlarimizni yetishtirish maqsadida balkim har hafta bir 2-3 hafta shunday qilib berishimiz mumkin. Andan keyin inshaalloh bir umumyuzlik safarbarlik e'lon qilib shu korona tufaylidan uyda so'nib qolgan Uyg'urlarimiz vatan uchun nima ish qilib beramiz, kompyuterning oldida, telefonning oldida o'zimizning qilib beradigan ishlarimizni biz inshaalloh bu yerda insanlardan bizningki Uyg'urlarimizdan vazifa taqsimot qilib boramiz. Shunga qatnashib bergan aziz qarindoshlarımızga rahmat. Bundan keyin agar shuni foydali ko'rsanglar, davomli qo'llab bergan bo'lsanglar, atrofimdagilarga anlatib bergan bo'lsanglar, cho'qim bu Amerika Uyg'ur birlashmasininki a'zosi bo'lish shart emas. Faqatlam Uyg'urlar bo'lsa, millat uchun bir ish qilmoqchi bo'lsa, bizdan o'ginib yoki Amerika Uyg'ur birlashmasidan o'ginib, Yapon Uyg'ur birlashmasiga xizmat qilamdi yoki boshqa bir ish xizmat. Faqat va faqat Xitoy tajovuzlariga qarshi Uyg'urlar bilan xizmat qilib turgan shu bo'lsa, kim foydalansin, biz faqat Uyg'urlarga xizmat qilish uchun boshqa. Shunga buni keng tashviq qilib, bizlar balkim siyosiy ko'rishlari o'xshamaydigan, yoki mazhablari o'xshamaydigan, yoki boshqa hech qanday narsadan o'xshamaydigan Uyg'urlar bo'lishi mumkin. Ammo bizning o'xshaydigan tarafimiz, bizning tilimiz bir, bizning madaniyatimiz bir, biz bir davlatning insonlari, biz bir vatanning insonlari. Shunga shu birlikni nazarda tutib turib, inshaalloh bundan keyingi xizmatlarimizni yoki darslarimizni qo'llab berishni umid qilaman. Hamda men jiqib qilmay hammalarga rahmat aytay. Qatnashib berganlarga rahmat. Men videoni o'chirib do'stimiz Amerika Uyg'ur birlashmasining program director Maxga men beray. Max, I just said real quick in terms of a thank you note. So probably the stage is yours. I'm just gonna mute myself.
I appreciate it. First of all, I wanted to thank you, Kuzat. Kuzat Altay is the president of the Uyghur American Association for facilitating this first webinar, first series introduction to citizen advocacy, hopefully the first one of many. Citizen advocacy, your voice, our power. The Uyghur American Association works to promote the preservation and flourishing of a rich, humanistic, and diverse Uyghur culture, and to support the right of Uyghur people to use peaceful, democratic means to determine their own political futures. The UAA has undertaken the Uyghur Human Rights Project for the purpose of promoting improved human rights conditions for Uyghurs and other indigenous groups in East Turkestan, China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, on the premise that the assurance of basic human rights will facilitate the realization of communities' democratic aspirations. I'm really happy that you all could come on a Sunday, given the circumstances and coronavirus. First, I wanted to wish you all well, safety, security, and happiness during these times. Just a few housekeeping issues here. The presentation is being recorded and will be available on the Uyghur American Association's Facebook page. Please save questions for the Q&A session following the presentation. It should be about 45 minutes. So you can feel free to write down your questions and save them to the end. Everyone is going to be muted throughout the presentation. If you would like to chat with other participants who are participating, please use the private chat function. And to unmute the microphone, which I don't think you'll be able to do, but for the question and answer, you can click the microphone icon or *6 for those who are joining us via cell phone. If you need technical support, please ping chat Bilgunur M. Please name or rename yourself unless you feel like you would like to stay anonymous. Please keep your screen clean so we can focus on the presentation. And last but not least, perhaps the most important, respect everybody who's participating and enjoy. So here's just a brief agenda: an introduction, followed by defining citizen advocacy, the purpose of us all being here, stories of inspiration from myself and members of the Uyghur American Association, debunking myths, and citizen advocacy in action, where I'll do a demonstration on how we can advocate for the Uyghurs to our leaders and policymakers. Just one more note, if your video is on, please close down your video as it's distracting, it's showing up in the corner of my screen. Okay, again, thank you, Kuzat, for the lovely introduction. My name is Max Gelber. For the Uyghur speakers in the room, you can call me Musa Jan. I'm the program director of the Uyghur American Association. I was working a long time at the George Washington University, and I did my academic training at the University of Florida. Special thanks to this man, Sam Daly Harris, the founder of Results, the biggest anti-poverty lobby in the country, and Civic Courage, Empowering Citizen Action, for writing this book, Reclaiming Our Democracy. It's all about citizen activism and advocacy and engagement, and it really helped me kind of piece together all the different elements that goes into citizen engagement and citizen advocacy. I'll start off here with a quote. Optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with a large population of people who think nothing is going to get any better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. I'm going to repeat that. Optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with a large population of people who think nothing is going to get any better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist that we can solve those problems. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist that we can solve those problems. In solving those problems, we use tools that leverage our voice to communicate and convince policymakers that they matter. It's called citizen advocacy. Broadly defined, we can conceive of citizen advocacy as everyday actions we take, that's you, me, our families, our classmates, our peers, the action we take every day to make the world a better place. But for the purposes of our discussion today, we can conceive of citizen advocacy, that being said, we can think about citizen advocacy as rallies, lobbying, and speaking up to leaders through phone calls, emails, letters, and social media, okay? Now, there are many different ways to do citizen advocacy when talking about our leaders, whether it be in the United States Congress, the White House, or your local government officials, wherever you live around the world. And it's important to keep in mind that all of the different avenues we choose to make our voices heard is on a spectrum. That means that not one is better than the other. There are different ways and they all have a role to play. If you see in this graphic here, we have protesting, we have pushing or making demands, and we have partnerships. And there are many ways to parse out this incredibly complex and vast landscape we call citizen advocacy. But we're really focused on the far right here, partnerships, right? There are many points on the advocacy spectrum, but for today's conversation in this introduction session, which we hope will be just the first of many sessions involving citizen advocacy, especially focused on the Uyghur crisis, we're going to focus on profound, cooperative, bipartisan, meaning it doesn't matter whether you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, that we want to build lasting relationships across different parties and political spectrums. Now, protest, and I'm a big fan of protesting, is important, but it's a different point on the spectrum, and we won't pay much attention to that today. Now for the meat of the presentation, citizen advocacy, your voice, our power. Now the reason I titled it Your Voice, Our Power, instead of, excuse me, Your Voice, Your Power, is because I want to emphasize that each of us as individuals have a voice that we can express every single day of the year through multiple channels, that's social media, email, phone calls, or letters, that not only benefits you, but it benefits us collectively as a group. We can leverage individual voices to help our collective cause, whatever it may be, whether it's closing the concentration camps in East Turkestan, the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, or whether it's ending global hunger and poverty. Your voice as an individual really contributes to our collective voice and ultimately convinces and moves policymakers to do the right thing. If you can remember 3 points from today, these are the most important points. The purpose of why I'm here today to talk to you about citizen activism and advocacy. You can make a profound impact on huge issues with your voice. Okay, you can make a profound impact on big issues with your voice. Profound means deep, meaningful. If you haven't, it's likely because you feel powerless in the face of politics. If you haven't, it's likely because you feel powerless in the face of politics. Now, when I talk about politics here, I'm really talking about bigger politics. The federal government, the national government, right? Your state and local governments, where there are a lot of stakeholders, a lot of parties involved, right? You feel powerless, it's overwhelming. So if you haven't made that big impact, it's probably because you feel powerless in the face of politics. If you work with an organization that is dedicated to breaking that feeling of powerlessness, you can make that profound impact, okay? Hold on, I see some chats in the chat box here. Okay, looks like we're all good. Okay, so if there's anything to walk away today, it's these 3 things. You can make a profound impact on big issues with your voice. If you haven't, it's likely because you feel powerless in the face of politics. And if you work with an organization that is dedicated to breaking that feeling of powerlessness, you can make that profound impact. It's a circular phenomenon here. I want to talk a little bit about my story because it really proves those 3 essential elements from the previous slide. That now I feel empowered and emboldened to make big differences in and make big impacts on huge issues at the federal and local levels. One being that I focus on the Uyghur crisis, and we'll talk a little bit about that later specifically, but it didn't happen overnight. I remember as a child in elementary school, maybe about 7, 8 years old, we would have Holocaust survivors visit our classrooms. I grew up in South Florida in the United States in a very large Jewish American community. In our elementary school, though, we were very diverse. Jews, Christians, Muslims, Black, white, people of every ethnicity you can think of. I grew up in a very diverse atmosphere. And we had Holocaust survivors visit our classrooms. Now, I remember as a child listening to the Holocaust speakers give these harrowing tales of being victims in the Holocaust and what they had gone through. But what I really remember is the Holocaust victim, one in particular, came up to each and every one of us and kissed us on our hands and said, you have the power, you will have the power in the future to ensure that never again remains true, never again that we fulfill our promise to the international community that we'll never repeat a Holocaust. And I didn't think much of it at the time, but now reflecting on my experience growing up, I remember my mom used to participate in school activities and try to change things at the local level. In our community, she lobbied the local government to institute recycling community-wide. I don't know if all of you remember this, but back in the day, you had to take your recycling to a central point somewhere in the community that was run by the local government or the local municipality. My mom and a group of her friends lobbied the local government to change things so that the county, the local government would take care of residential recycling, pick up your recycling at your door. And that was a win. So throughout college, I recalled these memories with great fondness. And it wasn't really till after college that I realized I could make a difference, much like my mother, and much like these Holocaust survivors would tell me that we did have the power to make a difference. And like the first quote I showed you, optimism is the political act here, okay? We can make a difference. I would like to open it up to a member of the Uyghur American community, Samira Imin, for a story of inspiration on what we're working on with the Uyghur American Association. Okay, Samira, are you there? Okay. Oh, there you are.
You hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Can everyone see Samira? Yep, okay.
Okay.
All yours, Samira.
So hi everyone, I'm Samira. Some of you might know me, some of you may not. I work here in Boston in a hospital, and I never thought I would get into this like a year ago. But then after finding out about the whole situation, I decided to start my advocacy. So first of all, let me just, it was a blunt start, but I'll just get straight into what I was gonna say. So before I go public, I actually went to my senator's office to talk to foreign, like this lady who is in charge of foreign affairs, and then talk to her with the situations together with my American friends. And then gradually I got to know that they have this advocacy weeks in DC, so I went there. So I took the chance to, really participate in this, and then really got to know how it is like. Now, it wasn't difficult at all. It wasn't, it wasn't mysterious at all. You just go there, and then you gotta be courageous enough to believe in yourself and just go there and talk to them, knock on the door. Hey, I'm from this state. I'm Uyghur, and this is what is happening. Back home, you might not know this part of the world. Let me introduce that part a little bit, and also the atrocity that my people is facing. And then if you have a personal story, definitely share that with them, because personal story is always, I would say, it's the most touching, can be most touching, and that's how I have done my advocacy so
Just
far.
very quickly, Samira, how did policymakers, members of Congress in the House of Representatives or the Senate, or any leaders that you've spoken to about your father's case, how did they respond?
Well, first of all, they 9 out of 10, they say, oh, we are aware of the situation, and regarding my father's case, they showed a real sympathy, and then I was very glad that they do know these things are not only happening to the you know, my point is they do know that these things are happening to Uyghur scholars as well, not just I don't want to say ordinary Uyghur people, but you know, it's not only focused on the mass population there, but
right, yeah, sure.
specifically famous and influential, they're targeting them. And I was very glad that some of them know that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Any last kind of inspiring? Yeah, go ahead.
All right, and then that was the beginning of my advocacy. And then after knowing the full story about my father's case, I started really going public on social media. And I started with a song. It's called Hero. In the beginning, I didn't think much. I just thought, oh, this is a song called Hero, and I grew up listening to it. And my dad used to listen to my music and my songs, and he loved it a lot. So let me just do this. And then afterwards, when I thought about it, I thought it was quite creative, and many people have commented that way. So I would like to put out that really be when you try to advocate or go on social media, I try to be creative and really try to use make full use of your talent if possible, and really think about the psychology of others, your audience. That's one. And then one more thing is that I really tried to, even though trying to prove that you're not a bad person is somehow extra to me, but in this case we do need to do that. So I've been using evidences from the past to prove that whatever the charges are or whatever they're accusing or people or my dad, and those are completely false. And I don't do this by plain words, but as I said, some evidence which can be more convincing and which can draw more attention of others, like policymakers and journalists, I would say, like on a social media level. What else?
Well,
that'll be all, I think.
Thank you very much, Samira.
No problem.
I really appreciate it. And if you're looking for more information, please follow Samira at Samira Imin on Twitter. That's SAMIRAIMIN. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Samira.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Okay. We'll be moving on here. Thank you again, Samira. Certainly, quantum leaps in positive social change should be aspired to, promoted, and harnessed when possible. Quantum means huge, huge leaps, large leaps, okay? But in my mind, most durable improvements to society are the result of pursuing known strategies aggressively, and by striving to do them at least a little better each passing year. So what you should remember about this quote is that we're not new to this game. The world is not new to this game. There have been a lot of successful organizations that have promoted their causes using individuals like you and me, average Joes, to push their causes through and ultimately to enact some kind of change in the system. That being said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are models for citizen advocacy out there. There are proven strategies and approaches that we can leverage to advance the cause for the Uyghurs and other Turkic minorities who are suffering under Chinese Communist Party rule. And the situation is dire. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can follow other organizations and proven tactics and strategies for success. One organization I love to look at is results, okay? And I had mentioned it before, as Sam Daly Harris, who inspired me to give this presentation, founded in the 1980s. To a great extent, it was because of the receptivity created by results that the US funding for child survival increased so dramatically. And that led many other countries to come on board. So it was this organization and its volunteers and its advocates that really put US funding for child survival on policymakers' agendas. It didn't come out of thin air. Somebody and groups of people had to make it happen. And I'll get to how they did that in a second, but it's worthwhile to note that these are the numbers for child survival and maternal health programs funding. In 2018, 830 million about for maternal and child health. The president requested a decrease and to 619 million, right? When people pushed back, when they lobbied their Congress, when they engaged in the political process, when they wrote letters, emails, made phone calls, and used social media, they ensured that the 2019 budget didn't reflect the president's request. It actually increased 0.5%. The same thing happened with the president's request in fiscal year 2020. President requested the same, a decrease to $619.6 million for maternal and child health funding for these global programs. When people called their congressmen, called their representatives, wrote emails, wrote to local journalists, gave testimony to how these will affect their lives and their fellow citizens in their district, right? The 2020 budget actually increased the account, the money for maternal and child health, a whopping 23%. So the president requested a 26% decrease. People fought back using citizen activism and advocacy, right? Which we all have the tools to use. And they ended up shifting policy, an increase in the budget, 23%. The same thing happened for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, okay? We saw demands from the president's budget to decrease the funding for those accounts. But after people power made itself known, after people fought using their voices to increase funding, we see a 62% increase from fiscal year 2019 to fiscal year 2020 for the global funds to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And how did they do this? Well, they did this by writing a lot of letters, setting up a lot of meetings, tabling at a lot of events. Sorry, I saw a chat come up. Tabling at a lot of events, writing letters to Congress, emails, and writing letters to their local press, okay? This is another organization, so we're talking about models for citizen advocacy. Another organization I like to follow closely is Citizens Climate Lobby. Their focus is to ameliorate climate change through a bill called the Energy Innovation Act, Energy Innovation and Climate Dividend Act, excuse me. We can see huge increases from 2010 to 2019 in the number of citizen-led lobby meetings. That's in district and in our nation's capital, right? From 2014 to 2019, they saw a 57% increase in those lobby meetings, a 358% increase in speaking engagements and tabling events. Their letters to Congress almost reached 100,000 by 2019. A 1,314% increase, okay? And if you remember back to our purpose, there are 3 takeaways for this meeting, right? You know now that you can make a profound impact on big issues with your voice. So the question remains, why don't more people get involved? While 96% of Americans do believe it is important to reduce the influence of money in politics, 91% believe it is essentially impossible. We are resigned as a people to the corruption of government. We have learned to accept a fate that seems unavoidable, right? So this disconnect, and this is just one example, money in politics, but these numbers reign true for issues across the board. Americans and others all over the world believe something has to happen, but don't believe we can ever get it done. This disconnect is the politics of resignation. It's that hopelessness, that feeling of hopelessness that we need to start to fundamentally change in the attitudes of everyday people in order to get things done, in order to get our policymakers to listen, okay? So what do we do? How do we convince the 91% of people that it is possible to, again, issues across the board, reduce the influence of money in politics, end hunger, defeat coronavirus, right? We see that in the press. We see that in the news a lot lately. And close the concentration camps in Xinjiang and East Turkestan. How do we convince the 91% of people that it is actually possible to follow through and change things? So we're going to go on to debunk some myths, okay? A myth is something we believe to be true, but it actually isn't, okay? Let's reverse some of these myths. You may be thinking, well, I can't get involved because, excuse me, I can't get involved because I'm not really that political. I don't do politics. I'm averse to conflict, meaning I really don't like conflict. Well, you don't have to be political to join your voice with those in need. Writing a letter, sending an email, leaving a brief phone message. These are all ways to educate, okay? Educate elected officials about the issues you care about. Uyghurs in East Turkestan, the Chinese Communist Party's horrible methods of interrogation and torture, right? By doing one of these easy activities, you can advocate for yourself, your family, and your community. You give them a story, tell them why you want them to support the issues you care about, okay? This is what it's all about. So you don't have to be political. You're not running for office. The second myth I want to debunk, and if you see the little picture there, it says, hello, is anybody there? With somebody in a loudspeaker, ostensibly shouting at an empty Congress, right? My leaders and elected officials don't seem to care. Why waste my time? Well, of course, one person writing a letter, it's difficult to change policy. This is where numbers really matter. If we have tens, hundreds of people communicating with their leaders and policymakers, their senators, their members members in Congress, okay? UN officials, school superintendents, whatever the issue may be. This is where we get real traction, when we have a lot of people communicating their opinions and backing them up with their personal stories. Now, I wanted to ask a question to the group, and let's see who can answer this question. And please raise your hand and send me in the chat box if you can answer this question, okay? I'll give you 30 seconds. How many tweets does it take for a member of Congress to pay attention? Okay, the question is, how many tweets does it take for a member of Congress to pay attention to your issue? Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, thank you guys for sending, all right. Okay, last one, all right. Okay, we got answers across the board here, but according to a 2014 study from the Congressional Management Foundation, 30 or fewer similar comments on a social media post are enough to get an office's attention. But they need to be posted quickly or they may not be seen. So about 1/3 or 35% of the respondents, those answering the survey in Congress, said it takes fewer than 10 similar comments for their offices to pay attention. And nearly half, almost 45%, said their offices will pay attention to between 10 and 30 similar comments. However, the more time that passes after an office posts on social media, the less likely it will be that staff will review the response. So anywhere under 30, but between 10 and 30, that's pretty remarkable. Some of you guys wrote 10,000, 100,000, 1,500. Actually, it's somewhere in the tens, 30 about, okay? So I think that thank you guys for participating. Sometimes it can be that elected officials have their different issues. However, issues like the Uyghur crisis, everyone, and I mean everyone in Congress, has reason to pay attention to. This is a tragedy of humanity. Like I said, we promised the world that we would fulfill never again. We would ensure that we don't repeat a Holocaust. And I think everybody fundamentally believes that. The question remains how we deal with the Chinese Communist Party, right? And that's where we require frequent communication of our opinions on how they should enact different legislation and policy. But leaders do care. There's been a lot of research done, most recently by the Open Government Foundation, that constituents or citizens writing into their policymakers is perhaps the single most important thing and driver of policy. So you're not shouting to an empty Congress. Your leaders and elected officials do care. They especially care if you're a constituent, okay? So the third myth I want to debunk is, and we all feel this way, right? I'm way too busy to get involved. Work, school, kids, I just don't have the time. Well, lucky for you, there are many ways to engage your policymakers that don't require a lot of time. For instance, how long does it take to tweet out your opinion when it comes to a policy? A tweet, a forward, it takes 15 seconds, right? 30 seconds, you can call a friend and enlighten them with your knowledge about the Uyghur crisis. You can have a conversation on a bus or with people you meet on the street. 30 seconds, right? Is everyone too busy to take 15 or 30 seconds out of their life to highlight an issue they truly care about? And not only that they care about, that's important for millions and millions of people. In 1 minute, you can make a list of 3 steps you can take for future advocacy. You don't have to take those actions right now, but you can make a list in 1 minute and say, next week, I'm going to write a letter to my senator, Senator Warner, right? Or in 1 month, I'm going to write a letter to the World Health Organization urging them to adopt Taiwan as a member, okay? If you guys saw on Twitter, that a remarkably pathetic interview with a World Health Organization official on being questioned about Taiwan and whether they should be a member or not, the World Health Organization. In 3 minutes, you can call your state legislators, you can call your congressman, you can call your senator. It only takes 3 minutes. In 5 minutes, you can write an email. In 10 minutes, you can educate yourself, meaning you could read a new article in the news about the Uyghur crisis, and so on and so forth. So we all have time to dedicate towards elevating and amplifying the voices of the voiceless in East Turkestan, in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Number 4, I'm shy. I'm a real introvert. Well, I think all of us to a certain degree are shy, but, it can seem nerve-wracking or frightening to correspond with the representative or senator. I mean, they're all the way up in government, right? It's scary. But the first time you do it, the second time you do it, the third time you do it, it gradually gets easier to do, okay? Plus, when you're writing an email to Congress, nobody sees that but you and the member of Congress's staff or the member of Congress, him or herself. Okay, next slide. another myth here. Advocacy like this doesn't work. Don't our leaders just delete our messages? While our leaders, members of Congress in the House and in the Senate, receive a lot of constituent emails, phone calls, and letters each and every day, they do not delete your messages. In fact, each one of our messages to Congress are tracked if we're a constituent, meaning if we put our zip code and it's going to the senator or member of Congress who is representing us, those will be tracked. And oftentimes, those will be incorporated into briefs given directly to the member of Congress. So when you think about next time writing a letter, like I just wrote to my senator, Tim Kaine, or Mark Warner, just remember that they are being tracked, they're not being thrown away, okay? And if we had some more time, I would cite some research, but it looks like we're running close to Q&A. I'm a Democrat, and my member of Congress is Republican. Why would they listen to me? Well, I'll tell you, we've seen broad bipartisan support for the Uyghur cause, Uyghur issues, and the plight of those Turkic minorities, including the Uyghurs, but also Kazakh and Kyrgyz, who are suffering in East Turkestan, for the closing of the concentration camps, for the ending of forced labor in China, for the calling out of companies who are complicit in using Uyghur forced labor. We've seen broad bipartisan support, meaning we've seen support for these issues independent of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, across party lines, okay? So, and in terms of your individual political affiliation, it doesn't matter. You are a constituent. When your voice is when you communicate with your member of Congress, they are listening, because this is the primary way that they get a pulse, that they get an understanding of how people in their districts or their state are feeling, okay? The last myth I want to debunk is this. You may be telling yourself or asking yourself, well, I don't know, this all seems great, but I'm just not an authority on the issue. I'm not an expert on this topic. I have lived experiences. I have friends who I talk to who are victims of these atrocities, but I just don't have a lot of the facts. I'm just an average Joe or Jane, right? What can I possibly say? Well, a lot of members of Congress and their staff look precisely to members of the community to speak firsthand about how these issues impact you, your family, and your community. They can find the research. In fact, many organizations send them research all the time about the Uyghur crisis when it comes to the numbers, when it comes to the more scholarly stuff. But when you contact them, it's about your concerns. It's about how these issues or the legislation they're proposing affects you and your community as a regular citizen, not as an authority, okay? And it's important to make this clear distinction because there are hired lobbyists all over Washington to push different issues, to make members of Congress aware of different issues and to try to influence them. But nothing holds the weight of a citizen or a constituent, a local in the community who's expressing themselves to their member of Congress, okay? Okay, I just got a Q&A. Okay, Louisa, just hold on and you can ask that at the very end, okay? So this comes to our third point, and we're about to close here and get ready for Q&A. It's, does everyone remember this poster? I want you. It's a little modified, right? It's originally Uncle Sam trying to get recruits for the military. I want you to wake up, to wake others up, to know you are free to think for yourself, to protect your rights, and to resist tyranny. I want you. The third pillar of this conversation was, if you remember, if you can find an organization that helps in defeating that sense of powerlessness, those feelings of powerlessness, you'll be able to accomplish your goals and make huge impacts on very large issues in politics. We want you to come engage with us at the Uyghur American Association and our different organizations that work on these issues, like the Uyghur Human Rights Project, and we want you to help us elevate this issue, okay? We can help you dissolve this feeling of powerlessness. Huzat, the president of the Uyghur American Association, myself as program director, and the rest of the board and members, we're all here to help. So never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Okay, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I really appreciate y'all's time. We're gonna go to a Q&A portion. Before we do, there's my contact information, Twitter handle at Max Gelber, Gelber4. And Uyghur American Association's Twitter is Uyghur, UYGHUR_American, AMERICAN. Email is info@uyghuramerican.org. You can contact me anytime through Twitter direct messages, which is open, or by email at info@uyghuramerican.org. Thank you so much for your time. We're gonna go to a Q&A, and feel free to ask as many questions. We're ending at 12, but I'll be on the Zoom line further to answer some of your questions, okay? Okay. So, Kuzat, how do you want to do this? So maybe you can ask, if somebody raises their hand, they can ask a question, okay? So do you guys see the little hand raise tab?
I think a couple people asked question.
Okay, Dilyar, okay, I'm gonna find you here and you'll be able to ask a question.
Pretty sure Dilyar have a good question.
Okay. Okay, Dilyar, all yours.
First and foremost, thank you so much, Max. I really appreciate the initiative that you guys have organized here. Quick question for you all. Besides the obvious, how can we motivate all Uyghurs and non-Uyghurs alike to genuinely and proactively care about what's happening? Because I feel like sometimes there's a clear and distinct disconnect with the narrative. And I think this is something that we need to proactively instill in our mindsets because we need to rally up as many troops as possible, right? So if you could address that for everyone, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. That is a difficult question to answer because everybody has their own way of making this, highlighting this issue as something so incredibly important and more important than other issues, and something that should not only matter to the Uyghur community, but should also matter to everybody. And I think it comes with our stories. The power of our stories is what we can rely on. And it really comes with frequent interpersonal communication with others. I'm not talking about Twitter. I'm talking about heartfelt dialogue between two people. I'm talking about sitting, I often will be sitting at a bus stop and meet somebody new, and I bring up the issue and say how it's impacted so many of my friends, who now I consider family, right? And what is really at stake here. The other thing I would mention is that connecting it, and this is especially true with our policymakers, but with fellow Americans as well, and those internationally, connect them with issues that impact them and their families. One way we've seen this done quite well is the issue with forced labor, right? People may not know personally a Uyghur family who's been affected by the atrocities in East Turkestan, but when you hear that Nike, a company that we buy shoes from all the time, I have a pair of Nikes, I have a couple pair of Nikes, right, are complicit in, meaning they exploit forced labor in their supply chain, Uyghur forced labor in China. That's a way to connect the issue to something that you're contributing to. I'm contributing to it as a consumer, right? As an American consumer of Nike, I'm, unbeknownst to me before, contributing to propping up forced labor. And To me, that's unacceptable. So I'm going to change how I kind of frame this issue. Another way would be through AI, artificial intelligence, and the use of facial recognition technology. That's been extremely popular among Americans who care about privacy rights. So, you know, not only is it affecting Uyghurs, but this kind of technology, this Orwellian technology, is being exported abroad and being used by companies here in the United States. So how far will the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and their firms go to really clamping down on any sort of dissent in the world? How far will they go in tracking our every movement? This is important not only to Uyghurs and Chinese citizens, but to all of us.
So,
I hope I answered your question.
do you mind I say something on this?
Yeah, Kuzat, go ahead.
First of all, Devyar, thank you for joining from Canada. Your voice, you should be late night FM show, I guess. Probably we should recruit you for some sort of voiceover for Uyghur American Association, any sorts of future job. That's one thing. The second thing is, I think it's a wonderful question. It's very difficult to answer from the internal perspective, from the Uyghur community perspective. You know, I think what I'm learning past 2 years is every Uyghur organization, no matter what, you're going to have some sort of clash, some sort of competition, some sort of disagreements, right? So then when I was thinking unity, when I was thinking how can we come together by uniting people in the thinking in the same way, it's not going to happen. Look at every country, right? Look at Canada, United States, you have Republicans, you have Democrats, you will always have different opinion. Then what I realized is this, right? As a Uyghur American Association, as a president of Uyghur American Association, do I have problem with others? Yeah, sometimes, you know, from other political leaders, we always have some sort of disagreements and the problem. But later on, I realized that those are very normal. Normalizing disagreement, agree for disagreement is something that we should do as a Uyghur community. So I am extremely open-minded now for working with any Uyghur in the planet Earth. I think once we can start establishing this in the Uyghur community, if Uyghur organization does not agree with another Uyghur organization, and we take it as a very normal way, it shouldn't stop us to working together on a common goal, right? So when Uyghur community can unite, can awaken internally, so we can actually impact what others outside can think. If we are not able to even motivate Uyghur community internally, how do you expect people in Turkey, people in the United States to speak up for Uyghurs when Uyghurs can't speak up? I think lots of Uyghur community members, they're sick and tired of toxic environment, toxic political environment. So for that reason, I want to put my commitment here to work closely with World Uyghur Congress, Campaign for Uyghur, Uyghur Human Rights Project. It doesn't matter who you are, as soon as we have basic minimum ethical boundaries that we're going to stand on and legal boundaries. After that's established, we're going to work closely with every single Uyghur in the planet Earth so we can get things done, so we can save life. So people around us don't have to think about which side do I have to pick. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kuzat. Okay, Derek, let me get to you. We have a question here. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that.
And Luisa asked a question too.
Okay, all yours, Derek.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm involved in like nonprofits, like even before the Uyghur situation. For a long time, I've been trying to like work with different try to work with like Uyghur organizations, because I actually got young people, like people from different races, to talk about like the Uyghur like prosecution. So I'm wondering, how can I like actually collaborate with like other organizations, and also what about like all the disinformation that get produced like trolls and stuff when about the Uyghur, like bad information about the Uyghur situation? I've been for a long time, I've been trying to like raise awareness and try to like speak out against that as well.
Okay.
I can't hear you.
Derek, Thank you very much for your question. In terms of working with different organizations, part of my job here moving forward with the Uyghur American Association is to build coalitions. Can everyone hear me? Okay. To build coalitions of like-minded groups who are working towards similar causes. Much like Kuzat had mentioned, it means bringing people together in these coalitions. It means uniting. It means putting aside differences and working towards a common goal. Like I said, this is bigger than the Uyghur situation. The entire global community is at stake. We've seen this with a lot of disinformation coming out of China, a lot of early evading of like the coronavirus and other news like that, people locked up over it. And we saw what happens when that happens. And under the tyrannical rule of the Chinese Communist Party, we've seen so many missteps, right? That now coronavirus has infiltrated the entire planet. And, you know, so it's just bigger than the Uyghur issue. Everyone has a role to play. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say, what was the second part of your question, Derek? I'm so sorry.
So I guess the second part is like,
oh, disinformation, right?
Yeah, disinformation.
Trolls. Right. That's an extremely difficult problem to solve. My best advice is that we have to continue to educate others through different platforms, Twitter, Facebook. We have to be vigilant in pointing out and speaking up when there's disinformation, when there's trash being circulated across the internet that people believe is true. The problem is a lot of it's coming from the higher echelons of the Chinese government. A lot of it's coming from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's coming from the foreign affairs spokesperson for the Chinese Communist Party, who's spitting this kind of propaganda. And then trolls and bots and people paid by the Chinese government are spreading this disinformation to every corner of the internet. I would say our best chance is to be vigilant and to comment and say, this is patently wrong. This is ludicrous. And then you can reference actual cited materials, facts, both through the news, and you can always go to the Uyghur Human Rights Project reports and see what has been documented about the atrocities in East Turkestan befalling the Uyghurs and other Turkic minorities in the region. It's very real. So I think we just have to be as vigilant as we can. Kuzat, do you have anything to add or to that?
I think it's a great point to talk about the importance of Uyghur Human Rights Project. Of course, that we can think about China's producing lots of fake videos, fake information to actually make this environment very toxic. That's one thing that we have very little control with. Their billions of dollars of investment on their trolls, right? The second side is education to the Uyghur community. I think is very important. That's why we need to invest on education, teaching people, how to really doing their advocacy work in social media, because I do understand if my mother, if my sister, if my brothers are prosecuted by Chinese government, I would get angry, right? So this kind of dog burning videos, some sort of disgusting like racial videos, I mean, it's going to release Uyghur people's anger, but it has very less effect on Uyghur cause. I think education is very important to the Uyghur community. With that being said, when we talk about Uyghur Human Rights Project, we have Luisa here. She asked a question. What if some people...
Oh, I'm going to unmute her, Kuzat, so she can ask her question.
Okay, do you want to unmute her? Because I think, yeah.
Hi, Luisa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm putting some resources in the chat. Sorry, here, let me hit send. If you don't know, if you haven't seen the chat, what you do is you put your cursor in the middle of the bottom of your screen, and you should be able to see
more.
Or, now why am I not here? I need to go to full screen. If you hover over there and you see chat, you click on chat, it's at the bottom, and you can see 3 resources. So one question is, oh, I don't know how to do my own writing, and we actually on our website point to this. You can look up all your elected officials there. And as we've said in previous trainings, you don't have to be a citizen.
That's great. I didn't know that. See that? I mean, I would have thinking about if I'm not citizen, how I'm supposed to write, campaign letter to Congress.
Representatives in Congress represent everyone who lives in their district. That is their job. Secondly, I did put up the What You Can Do page, uhrp.org/what you can do. If you want other ideas, if you've already written so many times to your officials, there's some other ideas there. And then I gave the address. Thank you so much, Kazat, to mention our news and reporting. You can look, the third address is uhrp.org/news. We also have our own reports. If you want to say, this is a Uyghur voice, we have our own reports. So you can use those, and you can, in the online forums to members of Congress, you can't put a link, but you can write out a URL like this. So you could put the address of a report, like the destruction of mosques that UHRP wrote, or our report about coronavirus in the camps and starvation in inhuman quarantine. Any report that you personally feel you wish other people to look at, you can actually put the website address in there, and they might click on it, and it might educate those staff who are collecting those responses. Like Max said, they have to, every response they get by email, they have to put it in a category, like foreign affairs. But you want to educate the staffers who are in charge of collecting those emails by giving them some resources like evidence, just like Samira said. So then my last question was, Max, do we have on the UAA website some model letters if people feel like they don't know what to say, they're afraid they don't know how to write to officials?
Yeah, excellent question. This was the very basic introductory training. The next training will be taking a deeper dive into the Uyghur-related legislation in Congress and how to effectively communicate by way of letters, how to write these letters. On my Twitter page, I do have a number of example letters that I've written to different folks over the months. One is recent, a couple this week. I'll be writing a letter to the World Health Organization later today. Those are free to use and drawn for inspiration. I would like to tell everybody that since we have your emails from your registration, I will send out a couple of one-page documents detailing information about our bills in Congress, and also some sample constituent comment forms, or basically letter templates that you can use and personalize when you send, when you reach out to your member of Congress, or in fact, any leader, right? Even the President of the United States. Next training, we'll take a deeper dive into exactly step-by-step how to go about writing, calling, emailing, tweeting, or other kind of correspondence with your elected officials.
So
Okay.
for Luisa's previous question, for people Uyghurs don't speak English, or they don't have good enough English. So since 2019, October 2019, we had two Uyghur American Association board member being available for 2 hours every week in our center to talk to those people, if they have any transition job, if they need any support. So, because of the coronavirus situation, we could not do it anymore. Probably we're going to think, how can we bring that specific thing online as well?
Yeah, I would like to, of course, everyone who needs to get off can, but Kuzat, can I stay on for a little bit longer?
Of course. I mean,
okay.
Do you think that we can let people feel less guilty because we
Yeah.
whoever
Yeah.
don't have enough time, or they want to drop, so we dismiss those people, and whoever left, we can work with them? Yeah.
If you guys need to go, totally understand. Please feel free to reach out to me, Max Gelber 4, MAXGELBER 4 on Twitter, or info@UyghurAmerican.org. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to still be on the chat here because I want to show you, give you a glimpse into the next training we're going to have and show you how easy it is to communicate with your elected officials. I'm going to show you a really cool tool here. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, and share. Can everyone see my Twitter? Kuzat, can you see my Twitter?
I can see your Twitter. All politically correct.
Okay. Now this is really fun. There's a tool called ResistBot. Here we go. And it delivers your letters to Congress. All you have to do is log on to your Twitter. And here we go. We're going to go to twitter.com/messages. Here, watch this. Watch how great this is. First, you type in resist. It says ready to resist. Reply Congress, House, Senate, State, or President. Who should I write to today? Yeah. Write the Senate. Okay. I'll write to, okay, my two senators, Senator Warren, Senator Kane. Both. Let's see. Okay. Everyone's with me, right? Everyone can see?
Yes, we can.
Okay, send as many messages and then say you're done. Dear senators. Oh, I'll handle the opening and closing, you say? So we could say something like, as a constituent, I wanted to thank you for co-sponsoring Senate Bill 178, Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act. Okay.
You need to send all this notes, copy paste, bro. We are lazy people, you know. We just want to copy paste.
I will. Okay, copy paste. Here we go. You want to see a copy paste? Okay, here we go. Copy paste. There we go. Okay, I sent my letter here.
Gosh, what is that?
I'm going to press done. Watch this. Come on. Here's your preview. Send. Here's a letter that was just sent. Oh, the formatting's off, but that was sent to both my senators by email, okay? And I know this works because I use this service. It's free. It's open source. It's open to everybody. You just have to go to @ResistBot. And that's just one of many, many tools that I use to contact. Okay. All right. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think you just create a trouble to yourself. Now we're going to ask, you know, is that possible to have small videos just specifically about Twitter, the bots, or specific training videos like 7 minutes, right?
Yeah.
By the way, soon we're going to have a learning platform for Uyghur American Association. People should be able to log in and let's, for example, whatever the things we talk about today, the video will be there. Also, specific videos of campaign writing, email writing campaign, or phone campaign, whatever the things, we're going to put short videos about that, including those.
Right. This is just the first one. Another thing I'm going to send to the chat, if you don't want to use Twitter, you can text resist to 50409. You could send your messages to 2 of your senators, your representative, or the president by text. Really cool tool. Thousands of people use it every day. Do we have any other questions on the chat here? Any more questions? If you have another question, please feel free to raise your hand. Okay, Christian, how you doing? Christian? Hello, Christian.
Hello?
Christian? Yes, can you, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so my question was having to deal with letters. I've heard that they're more powerful in swaying opinion, and I've always liked writing, so I've been writing some letters, but I'm wondering, as far as getting support from representatives, you know, how much should we try to avoid sending multiple letters where they'll say, oh, I already got a letter from this person, as far as maybe going to other venues and other forms of communication. Since I know it's good to be in a variety of ways to advocate, but at the same time, since I feel letters have more effect, you know, how much is too much, or, you know, can you say something on that?
Yeah, sure. I think you don't want to bombard your member of Congress. meaning I wouldn't send out an email or letter each and every day with the exact same words. I wouldn't just, you know, here's my letter to Tim Kaine, right? I just wrote it and I'll share it here in the screen here. Oh no, sorry, Mark Warner. Here we go. Here's my letter, right? This is what I wrote and sent this week, okay? Now, I send quite a bit of mail. I send emails, letters, and I tweet them. So I take a picture of these letters and I put them on Twitter and tag my member of Congress. So I tagged Senator Mark Warner, and I also sent it by email. But I won't send this letter tomorrow or the next day or the next day. I'll really try to space out my correspondence. But to be honest, you probably can't write enough letters to your member of Congress. Different members of the staff, so assistants, will see this correspondence, not the member of Congress first. Different staff, like assistants, will receive these letters, right? And then they will notate, summarize, and then that will eventually filter up to a member of the staff, like permanent staff for the member of Congress, and then, you know, hopefully to the member of Congress, him or herself. So in my opinion, and I've read a little bit of the literature on this, you don't want to pester, especially because then you drown out the voices of so many other people. So I wouldn't write the same letter with the same language every day. But if you have different personalizations, I say go for it, you know, because it will hit different members of the staff. Does that answer your question? Okay, I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay. Who else do we have here on the...
I think we have somebody called Mahira raise her hand.
Okay, Mahira, go for it.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'm gonna meet you then.
Okay. I saw... Wait, I'm gonna unmute you, Louisa. Do you have any other... Louisa, if you're still with us, do you have any other comments about the last question on how much it is too much with regards to writing your member?
That is a great question. I think I agree with your answer, Max, that if you write with sincerity, that you really
Right.
do want to ask them, and that's good. Another thing to do is at the beginning, like you did, you say, thank you so much for your attention to this issue. I want to write with an update, or you can ask a question. So if you start with appreciating that they're listening, then they're okay to read another message from you.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for bringing it up. You always want to start off, you want to take an appreciative inquiry approach. You want to start off with a positive. Members of Congress have to make a lot of decisions. They have to set policy and agendas, and they work very hard. And they're hearing from constituents hundreds, if not thousands, every day. So if you start off a letter by making demands, or if you're nasty, if you have an attitude, your letter will go in the trash. It will not, nobody's gonna pay attention to it. But if you start off by thanking the member of Congress for something they're doing, it doesn't even have to be Uyghur related, although in this case it was. I wanted to thank you for co-sponsoring Senate Bill 178, the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act. But then my ask was to call on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee's leadership to push this bill through for markup, okay? And our next session will take a deeper dive into the mechanics of all of this. I thought it would be a little overwhelming for the first training, but always start off with a positive. It'll be much more likely that you'll be heard.
I think today's training was really to the point. It was short enough for us to keep our attention. It's difficult to stay online for more than 45 minutes. Thank you for bringing it to the point, and it was pretty light. And I want to add something about the being positive to those policymakers. Uyghurs know what I'm talking about in terms of blaming, whining to Congress people or Senate people, telling them what to do. For example, when Marco Rubio said something in Xinjiang and people literally called really said something really, really bad to or negative to those people, right? They don't have time. They're trying to help us. So I think we should always appreciate it for what they did for us, paying attention, thanking them first, always. I think it's a good thing. When you start blaming, whining, bitching, I'm sorry, it's going to be difficult, but somebody would pay attention. If somebody already supporting Uyghur people, they will stop supporting with that thing. So you're basically helping China, not Uyghur people, by doing that. Just let Uyghur people know.
Okay, Derek, you had another question?
So I'm just wondering, you basically see on other websites, they taking down materials that like is hateful or disinformation, like with the coronavirus. Why can't they do the same thing about disinformation about the Uyghurs, since that hateful or that disinformation? Or
I didn't quite understand. What websites are you talking about? Are you talking about
Twitter or Facebook or?
Oh, well, it requires a lot of people to report content for it to get taken down. And there's simply a lot of disinformation going around. And a lot more people care about disinformation regarding the coronavirus than they do about the Uyghur crisis. Some people don't even know it's disinformation. So it requires our perseverance, again, our vigilance in educating people on what the facts are. And, you know, the Uyghur Human Rights Project is my first go-to source for all things facts about the Uyghur crisis. And when you cite those facts to others, and when you prove your points using evidence, that cuts down on the amount of disinformation. Again, it's an uphill battle. There are so many forces against us in this regard that it's very hard to keep up, if that makes sense. So it just requires a lot of us to always call out disinformation when we see it. When you don't see truth, when you see blatant lies being disseminated, you have to stand up and say, this is wrong, this is incorrect. And you have to report it to Twitter, or you have to report it to Facebook, or you have to make a comment and say, this is actually incorrect. According to the most recent Uyghur Human Rights Project report, there are 1 million, so on and so forth in concentration camps. So it's important, again, can't emphasize enough that we have to stand up to that disinformation, especially when we see things like terrorism in Xinjiang and all this kind of stuff. This is blatant and flagrant propaganda from the Chinese Communist Party. So we have to put an end to it. Yes, Kuzat.
So what I think is, it's Chinese warfare tactic to, there's a Chinese word, say, zhen zhen jia 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 zhen zhen. What does that mean? Fake, fake, real, real, fake, fake, real, real. It means that when you mixed up all the real things with the fake things, it's very difficult for public to know what is real, what's fake, right? That's what exactly China is doing. Now with billions of dollars of investment, right? So it's not only our responsibility at this point. I think it's the responsibility for our social conscious people to put pressure on Twitter, on Facebook, to have fact-check artificial intelligence. For example, I think Facebook is doing a pretty good job. Recently, I was watching Facebook, one of the news, and under that news, it says a fact check. It's like a little pop-up window by Facebook saying that this is not real based on factual whatever. I think that could be a huge improvement, and I do believe that Facebook, Twitter, those platforms, they have social and the legal responsibility to clean up their platform as well. It's not only Uyghur people's job or certain people's job.
Louisa, do you have anything to add about
Yes,
combating
thank you.
disinformation?
That's a great point. I want to echo what Kuzat said about being careful in language on social media. So attacking some members of Congress who basically are trying to help, totally agree. Better to express appreciation, the fact that they're interested. But also on disinformation, I will say that social media posts that say China lies, ! Don't add, they express people's feelings. It's also true, but it's also not helpful. So let's think about another, just a social media seminar like this one to sort of, go through explain, what can be more helpful. And I want to say that everyone on this call still gets some special heads up that UHRP's research staff is right now working on a report documenting China's disinformation on the crisis in East Turkestan. When that report comes out, it will be great if we can together organize a citizen action to bring the attention of Facebook and Twitter to their responsibility. So maybe we can work on that together.
That's great to hear, Luisa. We will do our best to distribute those reports and probably the trainings.
Yeah, and one more comment about social media disinformation. It's not all one-sided. We see disinformation coming from the Uyghur community, coming from the Kazakh community, coming from allied communities who care about this issue and cause, but are also spreading disinformation. And that's harmful to us, to this movement, and to ultimately closing the concentration camps and ensuring that Uyghurs and others in East Turkestan can live healthy and productive lives. I mean, it's counter to what we're working on. So what Louisa said is, even beyond what she said about just not texting, not tweeting, just China lies, exclamation point, doesn't contribute, doesn't add to the cause, but also posting videos of people burning dogs and saying, oh, Chinese people are not sanitary, that's, first of all, that's not true. These videos aren't representative of entire populations. And also, we don't know where it's coming from. And spreading racist content really harms our movement and our ability to talk with our policymakers. It really does, and to advance this cause.
For those non-Uyghurs in a group, I really want you to approach this from an educator perspective. Try to understand why these people are so frustrated and angry. Like the entire classmate, all their teachers, all their relatives are being killed, tortured, organ harvested, raped. So having those kind of reaction, which that I grew up, I've witnessed people, most people that I know, Han Chinese, unfortunately, in East Turkestan region, was very supportive to the government's treatment to the Uyghur people. Like I witnessed that, right? So it is understandable that there's some anger and frustration in the Uyghur community, but it's our responsibility to also having some empathy for Uyghurs' feeling, number one. Number two, educating them, giving them wisdom, saying that racism, anger will not support Uyghur cause, right? We have to act rationally. Whatever China did, we can't wash blood with the blood. This is Uyghur proverb. So that's something that I want people, especially non-Uyghurs, to try to understand. This massive human rights violation since World War II is going on in this region in the biggest massive scale that is possible right now. So do appreciate you guys' leadership on that part, on leading our community, educating them.
Yeah,
It's kind of
and I wasn't trying to point the finger of blame at community members.
No.
We can all do better, and this is, of course, just an opportunity to educate and say it's just not contributing towards favorable outcomes for Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and Kyrgyz and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan and Xinjiang. The racism doesn't help the cause; it hurts it. And I do agree that we need to approach these things sensitively and with empathy. At the same time, we have to hold each other accountable. We have to hold each other accountable to, when we tweet, when we use social media, that's there forever. We really have to be conscious about the language we use to express ourselves. Did anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Kuzat, you have something to say?
I have to be careful on social media too.
We all do, right? Louisa, anything to add? If anyone doesn't have any questions, again, thank you so much for joining us. Please stay tuned. We have your emails You'll receive some information this week with regards to next steps and next training opportunities with me, Kuzat, Louisa, and others. If you need to reach to me, please feel free to reach out. info@UighurAmerican.org. That's info@UighurAmerican.org. Or tweet me or direct message me at maxgelber4. Okay, anything else, Kuzat?
I just want to thank everyone who joined this, the first session. Definitely, I sent a message this morning. You could have just watched Netflix or joined the session, because today I said our target is not China, it's Netflix, because we're competing with Netflix. For those who joined the session, showing up for this opportunity, thank you so much for your time. Please bring your family, kids, especially if you have kids going to high school, college, please encourage them to join. And we're going to publish the next meeting link. Please help us to distribute those links and invite as much people as possible. At the end of the day, this is going to serve humanity, not only Uyghurs. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and stay safe, everybody. Please follow the advice of the CDC and other health authorities. Please, it's really important. It's especially important for our frontline workers, our hospital and medical staff. Okay, stay safe.
Stay safe, guys.
Okay, thank you guys for
This is social responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, take care. Everybody, have a good weekend. We're going to end the session now. Take care.
Yeah. Wait, why can't I? Wait,
One button to leave. Okay.
wait, are we the last ones? No.
We're fine. We're fine. I'm gonna end the meeting for all. Okay.
Okay, but make sure the recording doesn't. Don't you have to stop the recording?
Yeah, it's recording is fine. It's gonna be automatically populated.
Okay.
Okay. Take care, brother.